You know, the polls are all rigged. Of course, lately they haven't been rigged because I'm winning by so much. The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election in 2020, and we're not going to allow them to rig the presidential election in 2024.
He's so, I mean, I just got to say it. He's so transparently stupid to say the election, the polls are only rigged when I'm behind. When I'm ahead, the polls are accurate. I mean, I don't know how stupid he thinks his people are, but I will say one of President Biden's, I think, most important lines, if you actually believe in this thing we call democracy, which Donald Trump doesn't and Viktor Orban doesn't, one of the most important lines is that you have to believe in democracy even when you lose. And that was a line that even Mike Johnson had to clap for, because it's so sick that you have Donald Trump and his extreme followers saying, if we win in the polls, then we'll accept it. But if we don't, we'll start a civil war, which, again, you look at some of the clips that Vaughn Hilliard had at a Trump rally. It's just really, it's frightening that there are people out there that are saying, we either win Democratic elections or we go on a rampage and start killing state legislators, start killing members of Congress. They, tried it on January the 6th. And they're saying it into an open mic in 2024.
So embarrassed for the Republicans during President Biden's speech when he was talking about January 6th.
Yeah.
And only the Democrats stood. I mean, I just don't understand. Really going to argue this?
I mean,
I don't think so.
Same people who were fearing for their life and hiding.
There are people in jail for this.
Yeah.
Nearly 4 years after the 2020 presidential election, Donald Trump is still claiming, without evidence, that the vote was rigged against him. Joining us now, the founder of Simpatico Software Systems, Ken Block. He's an elections technology expert who was hired by Trump. It's the Trump 2020 campaign, actually, to find voter fraud. His new book, entitled Disproven: My Unbiased Search for Voter Fraud for the Trump Campaign, the data that shows why he lost and how we can improve our elections. How interesting.
Yeah, well, it's such an important book by Ken. It reiterates what
Thank you for writing
63 federal courts found, and the United States Supreme Court as well. Talk about this process, a fascinating process. The Trump campaign hired you, said find voting irregularities.
How did they say it?
You did a deep dive. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, I was asked to data mine for voter fraud, to look for dead people casting ballots, to look for people casting ballots in two different states, the same person taking two bites of the apple. We found some, but not nearly enough to have caused a change in the election results. For me, the much more important piece, and by the way, I didn't think that I was going to find substantial evidence of that kind of voter fraud. And I told the campaign before I signed my contract with them that I would be surprised if we found it, but I would do my best to look. Much more importantly were the claims of voter fraud that other people brought to the attention of the White House that came to the campaign, the attention of the campaign, and the attorneys I reported to in the campaign did their due diligence. They didn't want to be part of a lawsuit that had a foundation of false information. And I looked at probably 15 to 20 different claims of voter fraud, and for each and every one of them, I was able to show and prove why those claims were false.
So, Ken, as we gear up for kind of the next round of this, and there is again the possibility that after the next election you're going to be called up, or perhaps it won't be you anymore since you've written this book, but somebody's going to be called up and said, can you trawl through this because we don't think the election was fair and that it was stolen from us. What could we do in the systems to prevent this from happening whenever there's a close election in the US, now that the kind of taboo has been launched that you don't have to accept the election result? I mean, are there things that we could do to tighten this system up?
Very much so. We conduct our elections as if we lived 100 years ago. And yes, we have computers and things in play now, but each state handles its own voter registration. The states do not in total cooperate with each other to make sure that duplicate registered voters don't have active registrations in two different places. Some states do a good job of removing deceased voters from the rolls. Others do an absolutely terrible job at it. And so the unevenness of the way our elections are implemented from state to state to state really mean that we don't have great election integrity. Now, a lot of people use the word election integrity, and what they're really talking about with just slightly hidden intent is election denialism. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the need for us to have a cohesive election, especially for Congress and for presidential races, where our elections are conducted very much similarly between the states, and I can give you many examples, shocking examples, of how a voter's experience can be really different from state to state and sometimes county to county in our country.
So, Ken, congrats on an important book here. You know, we just, as we came into this this block, I mean, it's very clear Donald Trump's going to do this again. Like, if he were to lose, he is going to claim that there is voter fraud. He is going to make wild accusations with little to no proof. And yes, there will be people like you who will try to step up and find it one way or the other. But a lot of his supporters simply aren't going to believe that. What are some things that we right now, before the election, can do to try to safeguard the ballot box, but also change public perception about whether these elections are free and fair?
Yeah. It would be very difficult to change public perception in the short amount of time that we have between now and the election, especially when President Trump is still messaging furiously about the nature of our elections and his contention that the elections were fraudulent. I wrote this book for a couple of reasons. I wrote it because I knew that my materials had already shown up in the January 6th deposition transcripts, and all my materials have been subpoenaed by both Jack Smith's investigation in D.C. and Fani Willis's in Georgia. And with this information being in the public sphere, I felt it was very important to talk about it with the right framing, my framing about what it meant, how it came about, and most importantly, a thorough explanation for all of these claims of fraud. They were false. And just because we have many, many, many claims of fraud, that doesn't mean there's fraud. The claims have to have some basis in truth. And I have yet to see any claim of fraud based on data that was true. And all the other claims we hear are just hearsay.
The new book is entitled Disproven: My Unbiased Search for Voter Fraud for the Trump Campaign. The data that shows why he lost and how we can improve our elections. It goes on sale tomorrow. Simpatico Software Systems founder Ken Block, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you for writing the book. We appreciate it.